Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Authorities in Australia rescued a bat from a hotel swimming pool.
I'm Tony Kornheiser. If it was corked, it could have belonged to your boy Sammy Sosa.
Oh, come on. Come on. Sosa
Wait,
and the Cubs have just made up.
I've got to see the evidence.
Come on.
I've got to see the evidence. The evidence is all over the infield.
All over the pool.
That's where the evidence is.
Yeah.
It's cork all over the place.
That was tough.
Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Myles Garrett wants out, Cooper Kupp wants to stay, Bill Belichick hits the trail, and Brian Windhorst joins us for 5 good minutes. But we begin today with a report in Sports Illustrated that the Golden State Warriors are, quote, very interested in acquiring their old friend Kevin Durant. Durant was on 2 championship teams in Golden State before leaving for Brooklyn and then for Phoenix. Wilbon, would a Kevin Durant reunion give the Warriors what they need?
I don't know, Tony, but it would make a hell of a watch for as long as he's there, particularly these last 35 games and whatever playoff position we presume the Warriors would climb into. Sign me up for that. You know, I've been on this whole let LeBron play with Steph and Draymond. Sign me up for Kevin Durant there, too, even though it would leave the Phoenix Suns, which I actually care about watching, it would leave them just out of luck, it seems to me. But I don't know. They don't become the favorite to win a championship. And I know Kevin Durant is pouring in the basketball. He is scoring at a rate that is Kevin Durant, Hall of Fame, greatest scorers ever. I mean, what's your list? My list, okay, so Jordan and Wilton, Jordan. Kevin Durant is on the short list in terms of just scoring prowess and efficiency, and you put him back there with Draymond Green and Steph Curry. You got something I want to watch. How far do they go? I don't know. Are they a favorite to beat Oklahoma City? I don't think so. Did they pull even with Houston and Memphis? Maybe not. But let me see it. Just let me have a whiff of that.
You and I are not on the same page right now about Kevin Durant now. I think of Kevin Durant now as an itinerant, just going from team to team like a bird landing, on a telephone wire, scoring a lot of points, but not really winning anything. I mean, I don't think he going to the Golden State Warriors, and we agree on this, I don't think it makes Golden State Warriors the champions. I don't. I will say this, I'm sort of amazed that his name has come up as going to the Golden State Warriors. I thought he'd finish his career in Phoenix. I thought you thought that. I thought you thought when they got Bradley Beal there that they were actual contenders, but they're not.
I was seduced.
They're not.
I was wrong.
They're
not.
They are tied for 9th place in the Western Conference. They're 1 game over 500. They have the greatest scorer in the history of the franchise now in Booker, and they got Kevin Durant at 27 a game, shooting 52%. They're 1 game over 500. You know what I'd like to see? I'll take you at your word getting LeBron James there. I'll see LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry all playing together like in the Olympics. But you know what still, Mike?
What's that?
They wouldn't win the NBA title because it's 4 out of 7.
Yeah.
And it's not a 1-game knockout, and they're 40, 36, and 36.
Yeah.
As miles on the tires.
But hold on, before we move on, you tune in for Durant, Curry, Draymond one more time. You would.
Sure.
Okay.
Of course.
Just checking.
Sure.
Making sure you got a pulse there now. Just checking. We've
If
also got some trade drama in the NFL. All-world defensive end Myles Garrett has requested the Browns trade him, recently saying he doesn't want to go through another rebuild. And Rams receiver Cooper Kupp says the team told him it plans to trade him despite his objections. He wants to stay. Tony, are you more intrigued by Garrett wanting out of Cleveland or the Rams wanting out of Kupp?
I have to be honest. I don't completely understand Kupp's position. He doesn't want to be traded. He wants to stay with the Rams, but he's saying they intend to trade him. And I don't even understand that, Mike, because Matthew Stafford said he was going to come back. It would seem to me that if you had Nakua and Kupp, you had 2 home run hitters. So the answer to this has to be, of course, money. It's got to be something where they say, we don't want to pay him the contract that we signed him to. But if I were Baltimore or I were Cincinnati, I would love to have Cooper Kupp. Myles Garrett, I have total sympathy with Myles Garrett. And I thought the note that was posted was tone perfect. He said, look, I can't play there anymore. He said, I didn't come into the league to go from Cleveland to the Hall of Fame. I came into the league to try and win a Super Bowl. I want to play in a Super Bowl. And nobody wants to play in Cleveland now because of the ownership, which is terrible. Because that contract with Deshaun Watson destroyed that franchise.
Yeah.
The coach is probably pretty good, and the owners are not, and they've gone backwards.
Yeah, Tony, my interest is in Myles Garrett, too. Now, look, Cooper Kupp can help a lot of people. I think about my own quarterback, Caleb Williams in Chicago, who needs a reliable receiver like that, particularly in case Keenan Allen, free agent, doesn't re-up with the Bears. So there are a lot of guys like that who can find Cooper Kupp always open because that's what he always is. It's not 2021 anymore. He's not going to catch 140 balls for 1 million yards. You don't necessarily
he's 31.
need that.
He's not. He's 31 years old.
So fine.
Yeah.
But still, reliability, I mean, come on now. But still, Tony, like you, Myles Garrett. So can Myles Garrett, in an era where you need to still rush the passer, and those guys are still at a premium, can Myles Garrett step into a lineup and do that? Yes. The question is, how much do you have to give up for him? I don't want to give up 2 number ones and a number something else. I know he's not even 29 yet. He hasn't turned 29 yet. So maybe there's 4 good years of pass rushing left, 5 good years. But
He's a sack machine. He's transforming any defense he joins.
Yes.
If I were Buffalo and I finally wanted to get to Mahomes and win that game, I'd look at him. Let's stay with football stories. But again, not a Super Bowl story, although the subject of the story has been to 9 Super Bowls as a head coach. It's Bill Belichick. And we credit an ESPN story that says Belichick is beating the bushes, going to high schools to recruit players to North Carolina. All the things you thought he would never do. Wilbon, does Belichick's apparent commitment to recruiting surprise you?
I don't know about surprise. It impresses me. And, I have some sort of related firsthand knowledge of this because one of the high schools Bill Belichick has been to, my son goes there. So here in Washington, D.C. So I know about Bill Belichick being on the road a little bit and targeting, identifying kids he wants to talk to, the best and the brightest. I mean, kids who can play football and kids who ain't going to have any problem academically at the University of North Carolina. Doesn't that fit Bill Belichick to you? Now, I know there are former Belichick players who said in the moment he was going to North Carolina, are you kidding me? Can you see Belichick going to some kid's sofa and charming his parents? Well, apparently so. Apparently Belichick's fine with this. He seems enthused. He seems energetic by it. I'm impressed by that. I can't wait to see how this plays out once the college football season begins in Chapel Hill.
So I'll go with your word impressed, but I am also quite surprised. I assumed, Mike, he would hire a guy to do the recruiting and then maybe he would sign them in his office, just like he hired a guy to be the GM and understand what the NIL was. And I thought he wouldn't get his hands dirty until practice started, and I was wrong. Because he wants to form this team from A to Z all by himself. He's completely in. And you know what I thought of, Mike? It's the groceries. He learned this from Parcells. You got to buy the groceries yourself. I'm thinking that if he shows up at a high school, how can you say no to Bill Belichick?
Well,
if you want to be a football player and he recruits you,
you're gonna be
how
impressed.
can you say no to Bill Belichick?
Well, you can say no to him. You can be recruited and seduced by him and figure out what you want to do because some other schools are after you that you may think fit your life better. And your parents may think it fits their lives. You can say no. You're still going to be impressed to no end. But let me just say this about Belichick, and this has already been true, and here's why people misgauge this. Bill Belichick goes to another school I have something to do with, Northwestern University. You know what he does when he goes there? He's gone there and done this. He goes to the women's lacrosse team's practices, all right? Because Kelly Amani Hiller is one of his disciples from New England, grew up there, has a relationship with Belichick, blah, 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 blah. He watches the women's lacrosse practices. So Belichick is not sedentary. He's not looking to say, let me just sit here in Chapel Hill and have everybody come to me like the king. That's not who he is. It's not who he's already proven to be.
I'm just saying it surprises me a little, and it does impress me. You had the right word. Let's take a break. But coming up, the Lakers introduce Luka. How's Luka accommodating to the Lakers? Acclimating, rather. Acclimating and accommodating, both. We're going to ask Brian Windhorst.
We're also going to ask him how Luka's feeling about his ex. How's that going?
Yeah.
How's that? Amicable?
Well, do you think it's amicable? His dad wasn't amicable about it.
I don't know.
His dad was furious
I don't
about
think
it.
it's ever going to be amicable.
Domino's.
Let's get back into the big trade between the Mavericks and the Lakers with our great friend, ESPN senior NBA writer, Brian Windhorst. And I'm sure you're happy where you are right now, Brian. But I remember you in front of the Eiffel Tower last week, and that was a background shot.
That's happened.
Second to none. Let's start with Luka. The Lakers introduced him today to Los Angeles. How is that relationship going on?
Well, it's all a love fest right now, but what I think is interesting is how Rob Pelinka, both today and in his press release earlier this week, really made it clear how they've got to build around Luka, and all of their things are around Luka. That's interesting for two reasons. One, for the first time in 20-plus years, an NBA team with LeBron James is not making decisions with LeBron James in mind first, which is what they should do, by the way. That's not controversial, but that's true. The second thing is we do need to pay a little bit of attention to Luka's contract. He only has 1 year left after this year, which means this summer the Lakers are going to offer him, and they hope he will sign an extension. The reason we haven't talked about this is because when he was with the Mavericks, it was just assumed he was going to sign this Supermax. I mean, why wouldn't he? It would have been 5 years and $350 million. And he was asked today whether people are trying to find out why Dallas traded him. He was asked today whether he had ever indicated to the Mavericks that he would not sign that. And he said, absolutely not. And of course, because it's 350. So the Lakers, I'm not really worried about it, and I don't think they should be worried about it either, but they need to have a plan to build out this roster and maybe even make a roster move or two when they come to him. Because they can't sign him to the Supermax. They lose the ability to put the extra $100 million in that the Mavericks had. So he is not as incentivized, not just in the signing it at all, but in the number of years. So that is now a thing that is going to be on the Luka platter a little bit going forward.
All right, before we go forward, I'm not ready to move on like everybody else just yet. I want to know if Luka Doncic is angry at the Mavericks. And I mean, was there something today that revealed his mood, the state of their relationship? Is he pissed? Because it would seem like he can say he's happy to be in LA, Brian, but this stunned him. How does he feel about them?
He betrayed nothing today, but from what I understand, he's seething at them.
Okay.
And their fan base is seething at their team in a way that I've rarely seen before. And, he's playing, the return game to Dallas is in April, like April 9th or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know many things, and I would always caution somebody who buys an April game late in the season because teams are always sort of maneuvering and giving guys off.
Yeah.
If you could take us to that game, Mr. Doncic will be playing. And I suspect Mr. Doncic will be looking at all Dallas games very, very closely going forward.
April 9th. I think it's a Wednesday night. Oh, wait, I looked it up. Guess whose air that's on? Tony thinks the Mavs, and he said this right away. I'm going to give him some credit. He said, wait a minute. All these people saying this is the worst trade in the world. Hold on. The Mavs can contend right now. But even so, in the same breath, and I got on him for this yesterday, he says it's going to cost Nico Harrison his job some point relatively soon down the line, 4 or 5 years. You agree with that scenario? You agree with TK?
Infamy is on the table here. It's on the table. And I don't know what's going to happen with Luka, but there's a chance he could spend the next decade pounding the Mavericks. He's in LA. One of the reasons this is not a terrible trade for Luka, he's miserable. It cost him some money, and miserable in the moment. He did get sent to the Lakers. A lot of players dream and try to force their way to the Lakers. It's not the end of the world. But I will say this. Anthony Davis is playing some of the best basketball in his career. He was awesome last season. He's been awesome this season. He is the rare double who's an all-NBA player and an all-defensive team player. That is incredibly valuable, and he is in his prime. I know he's older than Luka, and we're comparing that. He is in his prime. He is under contract, and he is a vital player to have on a championship contender. What I don't know if he is a guy who can change the course of a playoff series. I've seen it with Luka. These are the most powerful players in the league. If you got a guy who can take a team that's lesser than and rise them over the top in a playoff series, that is a superstar. I'm not sure that's Anthony Davis. He could prove me wrong, but I've seen Luka do it multiple times, and that's what the Mavericks traded away.
We will get you out of here on this. Are there any other trades on the horizon that we need to be cognizant of?
Oh, boy. I have compared this Luka trade to what happened in college conference realignment several times, where one team, Nebraska, decides to go to the Big Ten, and next thing you know, the Pac-12 doesn't exist. That is potentially what's happening here. Not just because it's seismic, but because the nature of the trades in the league right now all have to be 3, 4, 5 team trades. And so there is a lot of rumbles. There's a lot of movement in the force. How much is actually going to go through? I'm not sure. Keep a very close eye on the Warriors. Keep a very close eye on the Suns. Last night, Draymond Green gave a very interesting interview after that game, which the Warriors won, by the way. He believes that ownership, Joe Lacob, is unhappy, and he's basically saying anything is possible. And so the Warriors, be very, 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 very pay attention to the Warriors, very, very close attention to the Suns, and what happens with the star players on those rosters.
Ooh, fun.
Thank you, Brian.
Fun.
Always a treat to have you.
Potentially.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks,
Take care,
Brian.
guys.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, baseball fires an umpire for sharing accounts with a friend who bet on baseball.
That sounds too convoluted for me. The NHL suspends Ryan Hartman again. Man.
So when is the trade deadline? It's Thursday?
Thursday,
at 4?
Yep.
Is it 4? Okay.
Sometime Thursday
So by
afternoon.
Thursday at 4, all right, we'll... Happy time, people. Happy 64th birthday, Dennis Savard. The Hall of Fame Center is on the NHL's list of its 100 greatest players. Savard spent 17 seasons in the NHL, the vast majority with Chicago, but also stints in Tampa Bay and Montreal. In fact, Savard won a Stanley Cup in Montreal in 1993, nearing the end of his career. 5 different times, Savard placed in the top 10 in assists.
Spinorama.
He made 7 All-Star games. Savard had 473 goals and 865 assists in his career. Those 1,338 points have Savard tied for 31st most points all time. Well, then you always talk about Bobby Hill and Stan Mikita.
Bobby Hull,
Why
yeah.
don't you ever talk about Dennis Savard?
Well,
Bobby
Tony,
Hull, I'm sorry.
Hull
Bobby
and
Hull.
Makita won, and Hull's the most exciting player in Blackhawks history. Exciting. Savard's next. But then Kane and Taves, they didn't just win, they won 3. So Savard didn't win, not his fault. He got traded away. He was only 28 years old. He might have won, but he didn't win the other guys. The other guys won cups.
Okay. Happy anniversary, Jeremy Lin. On this day 13 years ago, the Knicks' 4th-string guard, point guard, pressed into action out of desperation by coach Mike D'Antoni. Lin responded by exploding for 25 points and 7 assists in a win. Lin's surprise opportunity led to a 7-game winning streak and a 3-week stretch of all eyes on that became known as Linsanity. An undrafted player from Harvard, Lin came to the Knicks when the Warriors waived him. He left New York for Houston as a free agent, but the magic never reappeared. Ultimately, Lin played mostly in reserve roles for 8 teams and 9 NBA seasons. He has a ring from his time with the Raptors in 2019. His stardom was brief but memorable. He was a comet.
Yes, is there a 30 for 30 dedicated to that 3-week stretch? It was so exciting, Tony, in real time. I mean, you could hang on it. I hope we see something like that again from someone. By the way, Jeremy Lin, 9 years in the NBA, 9 years of playing time. That's just great for anybody. And what he must think of that now upon reflection. Wow, what memories.
Happy trails, Pat Hoberg. Baseball fired the umpire for sharing betting accounts with a friend who bet on baseball. The league said that while there is no evidence that Hoberg himself bet on games, he failed to uphold the integrity of the sport. Hoberg says he takes full responsibility for his actions. The 38-year-old is known as the best ball strike umpire in baseball, and the league says he'll be eligible for reinstatement in 2026. The way all of these statements are framed, it feels like he's going to get another chance.
It does feel like that, Tony. And if he does it here, baseball's played around the world, then likely, very likely, somewhere.
We also want to note the passing of Tiger Woods' mother, Coltita, who died this morning at the age of 80. Tiger's father, Earl, got most of the attention, but Tiger has always said his mother was a tough one. Said Woods in a statement this morning, quote, "Without her, none of my personal achievements would have been possible," unquote.
You know, Tony, I years and years ago got to cover enough of Tiger Woods live and in color at the tournaments to see his mom sort of following him. And she'd be in the gallery and you could chat with her a little bit, and it was really sort of exciting. And Tiger always talked about what it is he got from his mom, and to hear that was always impressive.
Let's go to the big finish if we could.
Let's do it.
Celtics at Cavs tonight. Is that a big deal?
Yeah, the Celtics trail the Cavaliers by 5.5, Tone. We're getting late in the season. Big deal game. The NHL suspended Ryan Hartman of the Wild 10 games for shoving Tim Stutzla's head to the ice. Does that make sense to you?
It's a vicious hit, and this guy gets suspended every third day,
He
it
does.
seems. He's always
It was
out.
vicious.
Trae Young stepped over Malik Beasley after hitting a game winner last night. Okay by you?
Well, he was sort of in the way, and he had to go somewhere, but that's what he does between the ice and the veins and the whole thing. The Wizards won again, beating Charlotte. Bandwagon for you?
Don't get carried away. Charlotte is not exactly Oklahoma City, but good win. Good win. Last one, men's college hoops tonight. Number 11, Marquette at number 12, St. John's. Who you got?
That's kind of cool to see those two schools playing a big game as we get into February, Tone. I got the clicker, and I'm going to stay with that game for a little while anyway.
We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. Nephew Jonathan, happy birthday.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, knuckleheads. You can get the PTI podcast on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts. And now, the sports.
Windhorse was great today. That was great.
Yeah, he wasn't even
I
embarrassed.
mean, he knows these. It was just wonderful. Really was. And dressed up like an adult.
PTI bonus topic.
All right, Wilbon, where do you rank the new Mavericks in the Western Conference?
Tony, I love this question because I've sort of been obsessing over that, what the Mavericks are going to do. I don't think it's the worst trade in the world. People in North Texas have gone crazy over losing Luka. But the rest of us who are less emotionally involved can look at this a little differently. I see the top of the West this way. OKC, Memphis, because I'm going to give Memphis the nod over Houston because of Ja being back if he is. Denver fourth. I got Dallas moving all the way up. They're 2.5 out of 6. I think they're 3.5 out of 5th. I got them passing the Minnesota, the Lake Clippers, the Lakers, all those teams to get up there. I don't see them beating OKC in a 7-game series this year like they did last year, but I can see them getting to the Western Conference Finals, Tone. I do.
Yeah, maybe I'm a dope for saying this, but I think it's a good trade for Dallas in the near term. I actually think they can win the NBA championship with what they've got right now. I would point out to anybody listening or watching that Kyrie Irving has a ring, and Anthony Davis has a ring, and Klay Thompson's got a bunch of rings. They're going to walk into a playoff situation with a lot of experience, and by then they will be acclimated to one another. Now, I also think it's an insane trade that Dallas did. I think it will cost the general manager his job in the long term. I think it's very destructive to the franchise in the long term. But right now, in the short term, I actually think it will work for them.
That would be fascinating, Tony. And by the way, what do we need to do to get a Lakers-Dallas series? And I'm juggling the seeds.
That'll be great.
We'd love to see
That'd
that.
be great.
It doesn't look likely, but, neither was that trade.
Oh, Adam Silver can arrange it if he wants to with his television partners.
There you
he
go.
can arrange it.
Just
He'll
set
make
it up.
it happen. Yeah.
See, that's it.
Yeah.
We got all the answers. Back to you.
Yeah.